It's 7,014 on a Saturday morning. You're sitting at your kitchen table with a calculator app open, a coffee going cold, and a Zillow listing that's been haunting you for 3 weeks. The monthly payment looks almost possible. Almost. You've run the numbers so many times the keys are wearing smooth. But something feels different this time. Today we're breaking down the exact math of home buying in 2026. Not predictions, not wishful thinking. The actual numbers, and whether they finally work in your favor. Here's what's changed. After 4 years of a housing market that felt rigged against first-time buyers, rates doubling, prices surging, bidding wars on every listing, the dynamics are shifting. Builders are cutting prices, sellers are negotiating. Down payment programs are flush with fresh funding, and for the first time since 2020, monthly payments might actually decline. But here's the tension. Geopolitical instability is pushing rates higher again. This window, if it exists, might be narrow. So let's get specific. To understand where we are, you need to know where we've been. In 2020, mortgage rates dropped below 3%. It felt like a golden age for buyers. But low rates triggered a buying frenzy that depleted inventory. Then came inflation. Then the Fed started hiking. By 2023, rates hit 7%. Affordability collapsed. Existing homeowners refused to sell. Why give up a 3% mortgage for a 7% one? Inventory froze. Prices stayed stubbornly high despite fewer buyers. The result? 4 years of paralysis. Millions of would-be buyers stuck renting, watching prices climb, waiting for something, anything to change. Now, 2026 is showing early signs of a thaw. Not a collapse, not a crash. Something more nuanced and potentially more useful for prepared buyers. Let's start with the headline number. The 30-year fixed mortgage averaged 6.38% as of March 26, 2026. That's up from 6.22% the previous week. But here's the context that matters. It's still below the 6.6% we saw at this time last year. The trend, despite volatility, has been downward. According to Redfin's analysis, 2026 is projected to be the first time monthly mortgage payments declined since 2020, not because of dramatic rate drops, but because incomes have finally caught up. The National Association of Realtors reports the typical home spent 66 days on market in February 2026. That's up from 58 days last year, the slowest February pace in a decade. What does 66 days mean for you? Leverage. When homes sit, sellers get anxious, and anxious sellers negotiate on price, on closing costs, on repairs. Redfin economists put it plainly, the housing market is the most balanced it's been in almost a decade, with buyers having more leeway and sellers needing to be more flexible. Here's another shift. At the end of 2025, roughly 40% of builders cut prices on newly built homes. The average reduction? Around 5%. And 2/3 of builders offered additional incentives. Mortgage rate buydowns, closing cost credits, upgraded appliances. Things that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. Let me explain what a rate buydown means in practice. A 2-1 buydown reduces your interest rate by 2 percentage points in year 1, 1 point in year 2, then returns to normal. On a $400,000 loan, that 2-1 buydown could save you roughly $600 a month in year 1. Real money in your pocket while you're furnishing a new home. Now let's talk about your down payment. There's a persistent myth that you need 20% down. The data tells a different story. First-time buyers today put 10% down on average, actually higher than previous generations. It's the highest down payment rate in nearly 40 years. But here's what most buyers don't know. Down payment assistance programs exist in nearly every state, ranging from $10,000 to $35,000 in grants. According to Housing Wire, these programs typically replenish their budgets in Q1 each year. Right now, late March is prime time to apply before funds run low. Some programs are grants, free money that never needs repaying. Others are forgivable loans that disappear if you stay in the home for a certain number of years. The median U.S. home sale price is expected to rise only 1% year over year in 2026. That's the slowest appreciation in years, meaning less urgency to buy before prices climb. But, and this is important, there's significant regional variation. Prices are still rising faster in the Northeast and Midwest where there's less new construction. Meanwhile, the South and West are seeing prices soften as pandemic-era migration slows and, here's the kicker, insurance costs climb. In Florida and Texas, that's a real factor. Now let's address the elephant in the room. The conflict with Iran is pushing rates higher. As of this week, geopolitical uncertainty is creating volatility in bond markets. Rates jumped from 6.22 to 6.38 in a single week. That kind of volatility makes timing difficult and waiting risky. Here's the tension every buyer faces. If you wait for rates to drop further, you might get lucky, or rates could spike again and price you out entirely. The honest version, and I want to be careful here because this is where people get burned. A pattern is not a prediction. Nobody knows what rates will do in 6 months. What we can do is look at what the data shows historically, with the full understanding that history rhymes more than it repeats. So let's build a framework instead of a prediction. Despite rate volatility, touring activity is up 23% since the beginning of the year. Buyers aren't sitting on their hands, they're actively searching. That tells us something important. Prepared buyers are positioning themselves despite uncertainty. They're getting pre-approved, understanding their numbers, ready to move when the right property appears. So let's get into the actionable math. First, you want to calculate your specific break-even point. At a 6.3% rate, you typically need to stay in a home 5 or more years to beat renting. That break-even varies dramatically by market. Run the numbers for your specific city. There are free calculators from the New York Times and Zillow that factor in local taxes and appreciation. Second, and timing matters here. You may want to apply for down payment assistance programs right now, early in Q1 when they have fresh funding. Waiting until summer often means depleted budgets. Some states offer $10,000, others up to $35,000 in combined grants. That could be your entire down payment on a starter home. It's worth an hour of research. Third, consider negotiating aggressively on new construction right now. Builders are motivated. 40% cut prices last year. Many offer 2-1 buydowns that save you real money in those critical early years. When you walk into a builder's sales office, ask specifically about rate buydowns, closing cost credits, and upgrade packages. These are standard negotiation tools right now, but only if you ask. Fourth, getting pre-approved might help strengthen your position significantly. In a market where homes sit 66 days, sellers want certainty. A pre-approval letter shows you're serious and capable. Here's a strategy many buyers miss. Look specifically at homes that have sat 60-plus days on market. Those sellers are increasingly willing to negotiate on both price and closing costs. A home listed at $400,000 that's been sitting for 2 months? The seller might accept $380,000 and pay 3% of closing costs. That's $30,000 in your favor just for asking. Now, I want to address something directly. Your situation is specific to you. Your risk tolerance, your job security, your local market, all of these change the math. What the historical pattern suggests, and you should verify this with your own advisor, is that buying makes sense when you're planning to stay put for at least 5 years. If your job might relocate you in 2 years, buying could be risky regardless of what rates do. If you're putting down roots, different calculation entirely. Danielle Hale, chief economist at Realtor.com, puts it this way. Affordability improvements will lure back some house hunters, but home buying will remain out of reach for many sidelined buyers. That's an honest assessment. This window doesn't work for everyone, but for buyers who've been diligently saving, who have stable income, who know their numbers, the math might finally pencil out. So here's the framework. Don't try to time the market perfectly. That's a fool's errand. Instead, know your numbers cold. Know your maximum monthly payment. Know your break-even timeline. Then, when a property appears that fits those numbers, you can move confidently, not because you predicted rates, because you prepared for this moment. One final piece of math. Let's say you're looking at a $350,000 home with 10% down. At 6.3%, your principal and interest payment runs about $2,100 a month. Add property taxes and insurance, call it another $500 depending on your area, and you're looking at roughly $2,600 total. That's the number to test against your budget. Most financial advisors suggest housing costs shouldn't exceed 28% of your gross income. For a $2,600 payment, that means you'd want gross income around $111,000. If that math works for you, and only you can make that determination, this might genuinely be your moment. If it doesn't yet, keep saving. The fundamentals are trending in your direction. If you found this breakdown useful, subscribing helps us keep putting out content like this every week. Now, let's wrap up what we've covered. The 2026 housing market isn't suddenly easy, but after 4 years of a market that felt rigged against first-time buyers, the dynamics are shifting measurably in your favor. Rates at 6.3%, builders offering concessions, homes sitting longer, down payment programs funded. For prepared buyers who know their numbers, this window might actually work. Not for everyone, and your situation is yours alone. But if you've been waiting, saving, running those calculations at the kitchen table, maybe it's time to run them one more time. This content is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Always consult with a qualified financial advisor before making investment decisions. Remember, this content is for informational purposes only and is not financial advice.